All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome, guys, to our pre-arrival webinar. Today we have very special guests and very special topics. Just want to remind you who we are. My name is Hini Kamal. I'm International Affairs Coordinator, and I'm broadcasting from sunny Fredericton. And alongside with me, my colleague Kathleen and our new NBCC student who just arrived to Canada, and Barbara would like to share her experience with you guys and tell her just tell her about her own experience, because we all hear a lot of rumors how to get to Canada during COVID. Barbara is a perfect example of person who made it. I just want to leave and words for Barbara, so you can introduce yourself, and Kathleen can introduce herself as well. So go.
Hi everyone, my name is Barbara. So I'm a new student at NBCC. I'm going to be attending Business Administration Accounting, living in St. John right now. And I will share with you in a few minutes my experience. How was that adventure coming to Canada?
Thank you for the participation.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yep. Kathleen.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathleen. I'm the immigration advisor. So after we hear about Barbara's experience and really get that first person perspective of what it's like, I'll go through some of the more technical aspects of what documents you should be bringing and how to prepare before you come to Canada.
Thank you. So as you may know, guys, Kathleen is our new immigration advisor. So a lot of you hear from Kathleen probably for the past 2 weeks. Kathleen worked hard for all the in order to address all the inquiries, and she will assist you with immigration related and study permit questions. So without further ado, Barbara, can you tell us and students what it feels like coming to Canada during the COVID?
Well, I come from Brazil, so I was supposed to be here in March, but since COVID kicked in, my program was postponed to start in fall. And right now in Brazil, we having not much options coming to Canada. So my flight was, I came here through Europe. So I left Brazil and I went to Frankfurt, Germany, and from Frankfurt to Montreal, and from Montreal to Fredericton. I arrived in June 15th, so by the time St. John's Airport was not open, Fredericton was the only one that was receiving flights. So that's where I landed. And so before I boarded my flight to Europe, the air company was Lufthansa. And my flight from Frankfurt to Canada was Air Canada. So I had documents checked and every time I was supposed to get in the flight. So before I board the Lufthansa flight, they checked my visa. So it is really important to make sure your visa was approved before March 18th. My visa was approved in October of 2019. Mm-hmm. He also checked a IRCC letter I had applied for. So the letter was basically saying that I was exempt from the all the rules they had in place from people coming to Canada. So the letter was just saying you have your visa approved before March 18th, so you are exempt, you can come to Canada, but you have to be responsible to make sure that your presence here is essential. So by the time I had I didn't know how my program was supposed to be delivered. So I had a letter from NBCC saying that the approach for the fall would be blended. So I printed that letter, was signed, and I brought with me. And also before I come here, I called the New Brunswick government. They have a phone available. So if you go to the New Brunswick website, travel information, you see a phone number that is available for you to call them and make sure that you can come to New Brunswick. So I called them and they asked me if I was moving, and I said yes, I'm moving. So as long as you are spending at least 14 days here, you can come, because that's the quarantine time. And I printed the information, the travel information I printed in the New Brunswick website. So just in case, saying that as long as you're relocating, you can come to New Brunswick. I brought with me my letter of acceptance. I think it was basically that. So the IRCC letter showing that I was exempt from, the rules in place, the exceptions in place, my visa, my letter of acceptance, and New Brunswick information. And so I bought it when I got to Frankfurt. So before I bought the Air Canada flight, then when your pre-immigration, you will start. So they will ask you basically all the questions that the immigration officer will ask you to make sure you are not going to have your interest denied in Canada, or at least to minimize the chance. So he checked my documents. He asked me for my letter of acceptance. He asked me where I was going, which program I was gonna be attending, and why I was coming to Canada so early. So for me, by the time was the trick question. So because I was coming here almost 3 months in advance. And I told them that I wanted to come in advance because I needed to find a permanent place to live. I wanted to apply to everything I could in advance before my class started. And also I wanted to get to know the place I'm gonna be living for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. So, and he allowed me to board the flight. When I got to Montreal, there is this app that Kathleen will talk about called ArriveCan, that you will put all your flight information. They will ask you questions about if you have any symptoms of COVID, and also the place you're going to be quarantined and a telephone number. So it's really important for you to give a Canadian phone number, even though you don't have one, but from a friend that can be contacted and that can give you the officer the number that you're going to be having, right? So because they will call you several times to make sure that you are following the quarantine rules and everything. So this app will save you time when you arrive at your entry point, because if you don't have the app, you're gonna have to fulfill the form by your hand. If you have the app, very simple. So anyway, I got here. So when we had the first immigration, so she only asked my PIN number from the app, and she asked me what food I was bringing with me. So they're being very restrictive about bringing food and bringing stuff to Canada. So my advice is pack as light, as simple as possible, because they have been really restrict about luggage, including flights. So I was only able to come here with one suitcase, 23 kilograms. Anyways, after that, I went to this room that you wait for the officer to call you for a interview. And when he called me, it took me like an hour waiting. When he called me, he asked me, so what I was going, what I'm gonna be doing here, what was my program, and also why I was coming early again. So he asked me that 2 times. But he didn't ask me how my class was gonna be delivered. So it depends on the officer that you're gonna be interviewing you. So my experience, it's very personal. So my friend that was coming with me, totally different experience. So the officer asked her for her insurance, what would be her class methodology. So another friend, they asked like proof to show that the trip was truly essential. So it depends. Everybody gets a different experience. So yeah, so he gave me my study permit, my work permit. He just pointed that I cannot work until September, until classes start. He pointed that to me, and so I went to the Air Canada again. I got my luggage and I went to the Air Canada again to drop my luggage and come to Fredericton. So that was that part of the trip was even harder than the officer, because when I got there, the girl said to me, "Oh, you cannot come to New Brunswick. They have very restrict like rules in place, and I don't think you can come." And I said, "No, I made sure I called them, and I had the information printed, so I was able to show her that as long as I was relocating to New Brunswick, I could come." So I had to prove to her that New Brunswick was accepting people as long as they quarantine for at least 14 days. So, and yeah, when I got to Fredericton, we got in line. So we have this peace officer waiting for us, and he will ask you if you have any symptoms, and also where you're going to stay, and that phone number they can contact you. And very easy, yeah, they were very nice. And yeah, I kept receiving callings from New Brunswick for, I don't know, they called me I think 4 or 5 times to make sure I was really quarantined. Some friends, they had the officer like going by the door, like knocking to make sure they were like in the house. And yeah, that was my experience. Successful. Thank God.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just wanna let students know that as Barbara mentioned, so experience could be different from students to students, from port of entry, depends when you arrive, who you would dealing with, because CBSA officers that you're gonna meet at your port of entry will decide if he or she will let you in, or what questions officer may have for you. So it was Barbara experience. Thank you, Barbara, for sharing this.
You're
And
welcome.
yeah, thank you. So because we receive a lot of questions in this regards from all around the world, because there is different restriction across the world in terms of flights. So thank you. It shed uh, light on how it works. And yeah, I think we good with what Barbara says. And if you have more question, you can type it in question bar below, and we'll get back to it after Kathleen's presentation. So Kathleen, what you got for us?
All
What
right.
you know when we come into Canada?
Sure.
Yep.
I just wanted to say thank you, Barbara. That was so helpful and thorough. And I learned things because I haven't traveled to Canada during COVID, so it's a really helpful perspective for me to hear what that's like, and for the students to hear. Maybe if you could just give 1 or 2 pieces of advice of if students are feeling nervous about the whole process. What would you say is your biggest takeaway or piece of advice for them?
Well, so make sure you have all the documents. It is really important, even though your experience might not be the same as mine, but it's really important to take people's like who have been through that experience, just to make sure you have all the documents. And just if you there are like numbers you can call from the government that you can ask questions to make sure you come into Canada. It's essential, and you won't have a bigger problem or your interest denied. So just make sure, right? All the rules are in the website, so I read all of them and try to get as much as information as possible and print everything you can to,
Yeah.
you know, just get yourself a, it's better to prevent than coming here and you suddenly don't have something. So I didn't
Yeah.
have to print the New Brunswick information, but I brought with me just in case, and it was very useful.
Yeah.
So
That's,
just make
I think
sure
that,
you have,
yeah.
yeah, every possible, think about every question they can make you and be ready for it.
Yeah.
And bring a mask, right? You're gonna have to wear a mask all the time, all the time. So bring your mask.
That's great.
Thank
And I would
you.
add to print everything kind of that you read online that you think might be useful, but also once you've printed it, highlight it so that
Yes.
you're not trying to find where you read that. You can just go to the yellow place on the paper and show that to someone as well. So you don't have to, if you're nervous or stressed, you don't have to search for it. It's already there for you.
Right. Also bring your funds, right? Print your funds, because some officers can ask you, they want to make sure you have enough funds available. Bring the place you're gonna be quarantined, so they can ask you if you have something to show them. But the good thing is they usually take your word for it. So everything they asked me, they took my word for it. They didn't ask me to see anything, but I was prepared with everything. So, which is good.
Perfect.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you.
Great, Barbara. So,
And you've set me up perfectly for my presentation. So thank you for that. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Let's give it a shot. Can you see that?
yes, I can.
Okay, and I'll put that in there. Oops, share this again. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the whole process from today until the end of your self-isolation when you arrive in Canada, and concentrating specifically on your flight and going through the border when you get here. So we've split that up into 6 sections. The first is leaving home, so between now and your departure, what you should be thinking about. The second is the week before your flight, so some of those last minute items that you should be making sure are in order before leaving your country. And then at the airport and when you're boarding your flight at home in your country. And then after your flight, when you arrive at the Canadian border, so when you first enter Canada, wherever that may be in the country, and then your self-isolation, so your 14-day mandatory self-isolation once you've entered Canada, and finally getting settled in your new home in New Brunswick. And then we'll have lots of time at the end to answer. I'm sure you have lots of questions and to answer those questions. So between now and your departure date, if you haven't already, make sure that you book your flight if you meet the travel restriction exemptions to enter Canada, and we'll talk a little bit about those. And NBCC is recommending that you arrive by August 18th. This is so that you have enough time to do your 14-day self-isolation, and then you have a few days to get oriented, to explore your new city before classes start on September 8th. You can, in advance, start looking for apartments or booking accommodation in New Brunswick. This is also something that you can work on during your self-isolation if you're not comfortable getting something before you actually travel to Canada. Prepare your medication, so make sure that if you are on a standard medication that you bring enough of it for 6 months or so, and then also that you bring the paperwork for it, so the prescription that you got from your doctor translated into English. So if for any reason you had to declare it when you were crossing the border, someone would be able to read that there. Buy pre-arrival insurance. So through NBCC, you'll be automatically registered in GuardMe Insurance, and that will start on August 16th. If you'll be arriving to Canada before August 16th, you really should purchase pre-arrival insurance. This is because you need coverage. When you're traveling, when you're in another country, it's really important that you have coverage should something happen, especially given the current circumstances with COVID-19. We register you in GuardMe Insurance because we think it's a really good program, and they do have the ability to to do that pre-arrival insurance for you for a really good rate and under the same types of coverage. So if you didn't watch the Guard Me webinar, which was 2 or 3 weeks ago now, go on to the NBCC International Facebook page, find the link for that webinar and watch through it so you're familiar with your Guard Me insurance. And they will also talk about how to purchase pre-arrival insurance for when you do arrive before August 16th. Change some currency to either, well, preferably Canadian currency or American, because that's just good to have on hand in an airport and things like that. But also make sure to have credit cards. Given the current circumstances, cash is being discouraged from being used in Canada just because it can transmit infection a little bit easier than a tap on a credit card. And because you'll be self-isolating for 14 days, if you're ordering food for delivery or trying to make payments online, you'll likely need a credit card for that. So we would recommend having credit cards. As of August 17th, register with NBCC. So that's when you'll get an email with the steps for how to register. It's open until August 21st. Make sure, if you're in the air on August 17th, don't worry, you can register once you arrive in Canada. If you're not leaving until after August 17th, I would recommend registering beforehand before you leave. And then also definitely make time to pack your clothes and things like that, and to say your goodbyes and to say your goodbyes to people and places, because you are leaving home for a year or 2 years or maybe longer. It might be your first time, it might not be, but it is a stressful time, a sad time, and we want you to really make a priority of spending time with the people that you love and doing the things that you like to do in your country, because of course you will miss them, and try to make the most of that while you're still there. And then for the week before your flight, you just want to make sure that you're prepared and you have all the documents that you need. So make sure to review your self-isolation plan and watch the self-isolation webinar if you didn't last week. You need to be very familiar with that plan. You'll likely be asked about it when you're entering Canada, and you need to be able to understand how you're meeting all of the requirements of the Quarantine Act, and where you're going, how that works at the hotel, that sort of thing. As Barbara said, make sure that you're up to date with IRCC regulations and travel restrictions. It will make it easier for you, and you'll be more comfortable traveling if you're familiar with what the travel restrictions are and you're familiar with why you're exempt from the travel restrictions. So make sure to be checking the IRCC COVID-19 page regularly, just so you know how they apply to you. One of those will be requesting a letter of support for travel from NBCC. So if you do meet the travel restrictions, and the first and foremost exception for that travel restriction is that you had your study permit approved before March 18th, 2020. So that's the #1 travel restriction exemption that you have to meet in order to travel to Canada. So a study permit that was approved before March 18th. If you have that, the second piece is that you have to prove that it's essential that you are in Canada to complete your studies. So if you're in a program that is blended in the fall semester, so it has in-person components, that's easy to prove because you're required to be on campus to meet your program requirements. If your program is online in the fall semester, that's more challenging to prove because in theory, you could be completing those online courses from your home country. Currently, what the Canadian government has issued as the main reason they would allow someone entry to Canada if their courses are online is if they have if you have poor internet connections in your home country. So if you don't have access to internet or you have unreliable internet, that would be a compelling reason to enter Canada to complete your courses, but you would need supporting documents that explain the internet connections in your home country. And the other supporting document that you would need is that letter of support for travel from NBCC. So we will be emailing you this PowerPoint presentation after the session today, and everywhere where you see this kind of brownie orange text, that's a link. So you'll be able to click on that link, and that will bring you to a document that you would have received by email yesterday anyway, that explains the fall 2020 possible immigration scenarios for students. And the last question on that document is instructions for how to request the letter of support for travel if you meet the travel restrictions, or travel restriction exemptions, sorry. Now the ArriveCan app, that's what Barbara was talking about. If you take your phone and go onto the camera on your phone, you can scan that barcode that's on the screen, and it will bring you to information about the ArriveCan app. If you click on ArriveCan and then scroll down, it will give you the links to download the app onto your phone right now in either French or English on an iPhone or an Android. So I would recommend downloading it right now, and then it's there. You don't have to worry about it. The really nice thing about it is it works on airplane mode. So because you can only fill it out 48 hours before your arrival, if you're traveling, you're able to do all of that while you're on the plane. A note about this app is that the first screen that you get to will say, how are you entering Canada? So if you choose entry by air, and then the next screen says, are you exempt from travel? And that's a bit of a confusing question, because if you look at their definition at the bottom of the screen, what they're wondering is if you're exempt from the Quarantine Act because you're traveling for essential services, like you're a medical professional, or you're delivering food that's required, things like that, which isn't the case of students. So when you get to that question that says, are you exempt from travel? Hit no, and that's what will prompt it to then ask you about your quarantine plan. So it's really asking you if you're exempt from the quarantine requirement, which you aren't. So you'd say no, and then put in your information, and then you'll be good to go with the ArriveCan app. So I'm going to, on the next couple of slides, talk about all of the documents that you'll need when you're traveling to Canada. Make sure that you have them organized in one place in your carry-on luggage. So in the luggage that will stay with you through all of your travels. Don't put it in your checked luggage that will kind of disappear until you arrive at your final destination. I would recommend making copies of some of the more important documents and keeping those in a separate place, and also leaving a copy of those documents with someone you trust at home. That way, if you were to lose them or something were to happen, you have someone that's able to send you a copy of them. Also, contact your airline to make sure that you're prepared or eligible to board your flight. So airlines are doing different types of testing, different types of screening. As long as you've called them and you know what they'll be asking for when you get to the airport, or what they expect, maybe they want you there an hour earlier than usual or something like that. That way you're not getting stressed when you get there, because you know exactly what you're walking into. And then again, I'm going to keep stressing this, take the time to spend time with people you love. It's a big decision to move to another country, especially given the current circumstances with some uncertainty in the world. So definitely don't spend the whole week just doing to-do lists and getting things done. Take some time to do things you like to do, and spend time with people you love, so that you don't feel like you never really had a chance to say goodbye. So when you get to the airport and you're going to board your flight, what do you need to bring? You need to bring proof that you're exempt from Canada's travel restrictions. So again, that's a letter of introduction or a study permit approval issued before March 18th. And then a letter from NBCC about your program delivery, whether it's blended or online for the fall semester. And again, you need to request that letter. It won't be issued to you directly, so you'll request it by sending an email. You would have received this link in an email yesterday, but once you get this presentation, you can also click it there to make sure that you know how to request the letter. And then again, if your studies will be online for the fall semester, Oh, I'm so sorry. Something's ringing here. Sorry about that. So if your studies will be online for the fall semester, you do need to bring documents that say that you aren't able to access internet in your home country, because currently that's what the government is saying is the only thing that they will approve as being a necessary reason to enter the country. I would also recommend printing off the email that NBCC sent you stating that you should arrive in Canada by August 18th. Like Barbara was saying, they might be asking, why are you arriving so early? And yes, Barbara was arriving quite early. But even arriving earlier in August, we've had students that have had trouble because they were planning to come at the beginning of August. So having a letter from NBCC that says, we want you here by August 18th would also be a helpful supporting document. For your airline, you might need to provide some sort of proof of good health. So proof that shows that you are that you've taken a COVID-19 test and you've received the results back and they were negative, or they might just be doing temperature checks at the airport. So again, that goes back to contacting your airline and understanding what they require for you to board your flight. And then, like Barbara said, again, bring masks, bring a few masks just in case something happens or you need to change your mask. Bring cleaning wipes and hand sanitizer. While there are enhanced cleaning procedures on airplanes and in airports, I traveled during COVID, and having these things just give you an added sense of security, and you know that you've cleaned off the area that you're sitting in the airport, and you can feel a little bit more comfortable about that. And then finally, bring books and movies and games and headphones because you may or may not have traveled this long of a journey before, and you might be sad leaving home, you might be nervous to enter Canada. So bring things that will give you a bit of a distraction on your flight so that you're not sitting there thinking about all of these things that are going on. It's nice to have a distraction when you have a really long flight. So make sure to not just be organized with all your documents, but also with a way to make sure that you're keeping yourself busy on the plane. So once you arrive in Canada, you will speak to a border services officer at your first entry point into Canada. So that might not be New Brunswick, like in Barbara's situation. It could be in Toronto or Vancouver or another major city in Canada. So you'll go through what's called a port of entry, so an entry point into the country, and speak with a border services officer. And they will ask to see your documents. They'll ask you several questions. Barbara gave some examples, but those will change depending on your circumstances. And they'll ultimately make sure that you meet the requirements to enter Canada. So even if you have been approved for a study permit and you have that letter, ultimately, it is the border officer that makes the final decision on your entry to Canada. So you need to recognize that, be respectful of them, and provide them all the information they need to make their decision, because theirs is a very important job and they're working to make sure that they're keeping Canada safe. So they take it very seriously, and even if you have the study permit approval, you need to show to them that you meet all of those requirements to enter Canada. And then as an added piece now, because of COVID-19, you might be referred to speak to a public health agent if the officer has any concerns or doubts about your self-isolation plan or your health when you're entering Canada. So we'll talk about what that looks like as well. So the documents that you'll need, and all of this information on this slide and the next few slides, is taken from an Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada website, which is what the barcode there will take you to. So again, if you want to use the camera app on your phone, you can scan that and follow along on that website. So the documents that you should have ready: a valid passport or a travel document. So that would be something that allows you to travel internationally. Your letter of introduction or your study permit approval. So that's the letter that you would receive from IRCC that says at the top, your application to study in Canada has been approved, and again needs to have a date on the letter prior to March 18th, 2020 for when it was issued. A copy of your letter of acceptance from NBCC. So you should be really familiar with this document. You should know what program you're coming to study, and it will have a mandatory work experience letter in it as well. And then on the last page, we'll have a breakdown of a lot of information that's used for immigration purposes. So be familiar with every aspect of your letter of acceptance. And in particular, on the last page, there's a section that says if you have a practicum or an internship as a requirement for your program, know where that is, because you might have to show that in addition to your mandatory work experience letter to get a co-op work permit along with your study permit. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is or how to ask for that, but make sure that you're familiar with your letter of acceptance. You'll need proof that you have enough money to support yourself in Canada. So when you applied for your study permit, you would have had to demonstrate that. And you should make sure that you have proof that you have at least $10,000 for an individual to support yourself for the year. And then also either that you paid your tuition or you have enough funds to also pay your tuition in addition to that $10,000. You might need to bring letters of reference or any other documents that the visa office told you to bring. So that would be based on individual circumstances. So you would have been asked specifically to bring any documents like that if they were necessary. And you'll need either a valid electronic travel authorization or a temporary resident visa. So you likely would have been issued these with your initial study permit. So if you applied for your study permit and they asked you to mail them your passport, then you have a temporary resident visa. And that's like actually a sticker on one page of your passport. If that didn't happen, you might need an electronic travel authorization, which is digitally connected to the passport that you applied for your study permit with. If you're not sure if you have either of those or you're concerned, once you get this presentation, you can click on that link and it will bring you to, you say what country you're from, and it tells you what documents you need. Those are all of the documents that were required or are always required. There's a few other new document requirements because of COVID-19. The first, again, is that letter from NBCC indicating your program delivery format. So once more, you'll request that from our office and we'll issue it and say whether it's a blended or an online course for the fall semester. And then you'll need your self-isolation plan, and NBCC sent that out as well, and we've made it, we hope, very user-friendly for you so that it has all the steps that you need to complete. You write in your information right on that sheet and you're able to show someone every step of your plan. So a few other items about crossing the border is that you need to disclose if you have more than $10,000 Canadian with you when you're crossing the border, so on your person. It's not that it's not allowed to bring that much money in, it's that it's not allowed to not declare that. They just want to know for statistical purposes. So if you are bringing in the equivalent of Canadian $10,000 in any of these items that are listed on the screen here, even if it's not in Canadian dollars, it might be in your currency, but it does equate to Canadian $10,000 or more, you need to declare that. If you don't and they find out, they would fine you and seize the funds. Again, it's not that it's an issue, it's only an issue if you don't tell them that you have it, so make sure that you do. And if you're traveling with children under 18, you just need to make sure that you have valid identification for them. And there's different documents that are required depending on how the child is traveling, if they're traveling on their own or if they are with a guardian. So again, there's a link there to find out about what the requirements are. for traveling with a child and what documents you should have with you. So once you've gone through that whole process and you've been given permission to enter, the officer will stamp your passport and will tell you how long you can stay in Canada. Generally, this will match the length of your study permit. So when your study permit expires, that's when you no longer have status in Canada and you need to do something to change that status or go home. When you're going through, if there are things you're uncertain about, ask questions. Sometimes a border officer might write something in your passport. If you're not sure what that means, just ask them. This might be one of your only chances to be face-to-face with a border officer. So it's the easiest way to get an answer. Just ask them what you're wondering and they'll be able to tell you. Once they issue you your study permit, make sure that your personal information is correct. Check that your name is spelled correctly, that your date of birth is right, those sorts of things. It's very easy for them to reprint a new one there. If there's a typo, it's much more difficult to get that changed later on. Check that you have work eligibility statements. So with a study permit, you are eligible to work part-time during your studies, and that's separate from a co-op work permit. But you need a statement on your study permit that says that. So check that it says that. And if not, you can ask them to add it because you think you're eligible. And finally, know when your study permit expires. That's just good to know because it's the requirement to remain in Canada is to have a valid study permit. But I've also had a few students that were only issued a study permit, say for a month when they entered this month. So if that's the case, you'll need to extend your study permit very quickly. So you should know the expiry date. If they do issue you a study permit only for a month, I would also encourage you to ask them why that is. They might have a good reason for doing that, but it's helpful for you to know why they would have done it. And it might be an error and they would extend it. But again, just please feel comfortable asking them when you have questions. For the separate co-op work permit, again, the easiest way to get one of these is at the border. So make sure to ask for it if they don't automatically issue you one based on your initial study permit application. It's a separate document. So you'll have your study permit and then you'll have your co-op work permit. They are two separate documents. And the co-op work permit is required for your work integrated learning component of your program. And then a statement here about the importance of understanding what it means to have a study permit status in Canada. So you do have to leave Canada, apply to extend your study permit, or change your status to a visitor or a temporary worker by the expiry date on that document. That's why it's so important that you know that expiry date. If you don't do one of those things by the expiry date, it can have serious immigration repercussions. And you may have to prove that you'll leave Canada at the end of your stay. So one of the big pillars of our immigration system is that you can show that you won't stay past that expiry date in Canada, so that you understand that you need to make changes before the date in order to remain in valid status here in Canada. So this is just so you can see what a study permit looks like. This is similar to what you will be issued at the border. You can see right here, it says study permit. Your co-op work permit will look very similar to this, and it will just say co-op work permit right in that same place here. So check that, again, your name is spelled correctly, the expiry date, and so on here. And then it's right here under conditions or remarks and observations that you would have a statement like right here, may accept employment on or off campus if meeting eligibility criteria. So that's what you want to make sure you have on that document when you leave the airport, so that you're able to start working part-time once your studies start in September. So again, at the border, all travelers will get a handout that outlines what it means to self-isolate for 14 days or to quarantine for 14 days. And a border services officer will ask you, one of the questions they ask you when you arrive in Canada is about why you're coming to Canada, like Barbara was mentioning, and whether you're feeling ill or unwell. They could ask more questions as part of the assessment. It just depends on your answers as well as what's going on there that day. And regardless of how you respond to questions, they'll still be looking for signs of illness if you're looking like you might have a fever or things like that. And I think with this, it's so important to be honest. Give an honest answer. Don't give the answer that you think they want to hear. In dealing in all immigration matters, honesty is just so important, and you need to be giving an honest answer. And then also, no matter where you're coming from, all travelers will be assessed for this. So even if maybe your country hasn't had any cases in quite a long time, that would be great, but you'll still be assessed for COVID-19 and other health issues. If an officer has any doubt about your self-isolation plan or how you're feeling, you'll be referred to a public health agent for further assessment is all. And then you have to be wearing a non-medical mask or face covering upon arrival in Canada. And again, I would recommend having a few of these just in case, to make sure that if something should happen or if you're asked to change masks, you have options. And then you do have to provide contact information upon arrival in Canada, and you can do this through the ArriveCan app, which I would recommend, especially after hearing Barbara's experience, where it was straightforward, fast, really clear. But there are digital or paper forms that you can complete too if you don't want to use that app. And as Barbara mentioned, you will need a Canadian phone number to include in your contact information so that they're able to contact you. So make sure that you have something organized. You might not have a Canadian phone number, but if you're staying at a hotel, you could give that phone number and they could connect the caller to your room, that sort of thing. And then all information that is collected will be shared with the Public Health Agency of Canada. And it's up to them to see how they share the information with provincial governments or law enforcement. So just an awareness for you that the information that you provide will be distributed to different agencies in Canada that are deemed, that it's deemed necessary that they know the information. So again, making sure that you're being honest and that you're staying true to that self-isolation plan that you've provided. Just some advice from me for when you're at the border. Stay calm, do your best to stay calm. I know it can be really nerve-wracking and stressful. Crossing any border, no matter where you're from, where you're going, is stressful. I know I get nervous when I'm doing that, but try to stay calm. While we do take immigration very seriously in Canada, we are friendly people too, so be calm, be confident. And I think a lot of that confidence can come from being prepared and organized with your documents and your information. So like Barbara was saying, bring lots of supporting documentation. Anything you see online that you think is useful, print it off and highlight that part. Don't give it to the border officer right away when you show up, but if they ask for it and you have that document, that really looks good. It shows that you're prepared, that you're well researched, that you know about the travel restrictions and you know why you're exempt, those sorts of things. And it gives you more of a sense of peace or confidence when you're going through the border. In that same vein, be patient, be polite, and be honest. There may be long waiting times. These border officers are in stressful positions as well, so just making sure that you're doing all you can to represent yourself well and be kind will go a long way as well. And just knowing really well why you're coming to study and your NBCC program, and also advocating for yourself. So knowing that you do need a co-op work permit and asking for it, or asking for that work eligibility on your study permit. deliver those questions in a patient, polite, and honest way, but stand up for yourself and be able to say, I know that I'm eligible for this and I want this. And then remember that you are agreeing to meet the conditions of an international student in Canada. So you are responsible for knowing what those conditions are and meeting them during your whole time in Canada. So again, click on that link when you get this presentation and read through that page thoroughly. Once you arrive here, again, you'll have to self-isolate for 14 days. So this is just links. If you haven't done your self-isolation plan yet and you are planning to come to Canada, make sure that you download it, you submit it to NBCC, and also you print off a copy to bring with you to the border. Make sure that you're following your plan. Having a plan is great. The second piece of that and the requirement is that you follow the plan for 14 days. And it doesn't matter if at 10 days you're still feeling fine. You have to stay self-isolated for 14 days. If you don't follow those requirements, you are jeopardizing your immigration status as well. Reach out if you need help during those 14 days. Reach out to us. Reach out if you're staying in a hotel to the people in the hotel. People are here to help, and we know that 14 days in a room or in a hotel room is a long time. So if you are feeling unwell, or you need something at your hotel, or you don't know how to find out like how to get a cell phone or things like that, reach out for help to different people, and we'll be happy to help you. And then if you haven't already, watch the pre-arrival webinar about self-isolation that was last week, because we'll go through this quarantine plan in incredible detail. So it will give you some good context if you're building that plan right now. And then finally, once you're out of quarantine, and lots of this can be done while you're in quarantine as well, welcome to New Brunswick. Get settled in your new home and explore a little bit, because this is where you'll be living for the next little while. So sort out accommodation if you haven't already, and the link for that there on the slide is for last year's housing pre-arrival webinar, where there's a lot of really good advice about things you need to think about when you're renting an apartment in Canada, and location in a city, and rent and how that works in New Brunswick. So it's a really helpful presentation. You can apply for your social insurance number, and that's a document that everyone needs in order to work in Canada. Currently, because of COVID-19, you'd be applying online, so you could do this when you're self-isolating, but eventually it will be an in-person application, as it has been in the past. Explore and get settled in your new community. So learn how to take the bus, find out where the nearest grocery store is to your apartment, find out where campus is, what books you might need, what's going on, outdoor events or things like that. So really get settled in your new home. Definitely learn the COVID-19 regulations in New Brunswick. So research what the rules are here. They might be different from your home country, and you do need to know where you're expected to wear a mask, what's expected of you when you go into a restaurant or when you go into a store, those sorts of things. And so I've linked to the New Brunswick website there. And then get organized for your classes. If you need some sort of technology, or if you need notebooks or those sorts of things, start gathering all of that before classes start, so that you're ready to go on the first day of classes. All right. So I'm guessing we have a lot of questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can take a look at some of them. Okay.
Thank you, Kathleen. It was
Have
great.
some questions, Henny?
Yes, I do receive a few of the questions in our question bar. I will start addressing them from my side. You can just review them. I just want to ask the questions that I heard from students who require to obtain additional work permit in order to
Okay.
their practicum, because as many of you know that in, I would say, 90% cases, the practicum is essential part of your study, and you can check it in your letter of acceptance under section 24. If it says yes, you would need to apply for additional work permit. But some of the students already let me know that when they apply for study permit, they forgot to apply for work permit. And is there any way we can fix it, or what would be your suggestion?
Right. That's fine. It's not the end of the world if you forgot to apply for it when you applied for your initial study permit. When you cross the border, if you have that mandatory work experience letter with you and your study or your letter of acceptance that says that you have a practicum or an internship as part of your program, you can ask for a co-op work permit there. They may or may not issue it to you because you didn't apply in your initial application. If they do, that's great. If they don't, we'll do presentations on this in the fall, but you'll just apply for it from inside Canada. It's free. And you just say, I need it now, and they'll, it's a little bit of a slow process for sure, but they will just issue you the permit once you're already in Canada.
Okay, great, thank you. So guys, as you heard, it's always worth to try to ask it at port of entry when you come. If not, it's not a big deal. You can apply for this during your studies. Okay, is there anything else, Barbara, that you would like to add to this?
Oh yeah, just last tip. Claire gave to me this tip, and so be prepared of that. Things can happen that is not expected. So my flight got delayed to Frankfurt, and I missed my flight to Montreal, and I had to stay 24 hours in Frankfurt. So it was important for me to have an international credit card or some currency. So I had some euros and some American dollars with me. That was important for me, so I could take a shower, I could eat, and just be prepared for that. So as Kathleen said, bring some currency with you because you might need it.
That's a really good point, Barbara. You can plan, be really organized and have everything you need and know everything about the Canadian travel restrictions. But yeah, something can happen and you can be delayed in another country if you had a transiting flight or all sorts of things. So be flexible, be adaptable, and yes, have those things, an international credit card and enough funds if you need to book a hotel in another country or something like that to be able to do that.
Okay, great, thank you. I mean, it seems like we come to the end of our webinar, but if it's okay with you guys, I would like to stretch maybe for 10-15 minutes, just address questions that we not covered during the webinar. And if you have more questions, please send us to Facebook International page. So it's the quickest way I can get back to you or address you to the right point. And just stay tuned for upcoming webinars. So I just want to go through the questions here that I received and that we might not address during this webinar. So the first question: if a student starts his online studies for fall 2020 and after a few days he gets a refusal, then can I get my refund of the first term as well? It's a very good question. I just want to let you know how the refund process works. And for this, I will like to share my screen here, just to show you where to find the information about the refund. So if you go at nbcc.ca website, you can click student services and there is academic calendar. So in academic calendars, it's a very useful document that gives you important dates on what is expected, what is going on. So as you can see here, you will find the tuition and fee due date. So a lot of students asking when should I pay for tuition? Here's your due date, it's September 11th. For last day of classes, it would be September 18th, so it would be the absolutely last day for you to join the classes if your program is blended and you're required to be on campus. And the last day for tuition is also September 18th. So as you can see here, September 18th is important date. First of all, it's last day to withdraw with a full tuition refund in case you get your visa or study permit refused. And this is the last day you can join the program. And then there is a last day to withdraw with 50% of tuition refund is October 2nd. So I hope it's answered your question in terms of how the refund process works and when can I get apply for the refund in case my study permit gets refused. Just want to go forward and address more of the question here. So I think this is a good one. It's about the quarantine rule. We are 4 students traveling together on August 15th. Can we share our bedroom with another person? And if we're planning to reserve 2 bedrooms flat for 4 members, would this work? From my point of view, from my side, I can tell that NBCC recommend to stay in a hotel, but it's the best recommendation to make sure that you properly self-isolated, but it's not mandatory, so it's up to you. You can rent a room or Airbnb or full apartment. So what's your thoughts on 4 people quarantine in the same apartment? Do you think it is possible, Kathleen? Because you did the self-isolation webinar last week.
That's a good question, and we didn't touch on that. So, for example, a family traveling together, yes, they can quarantine together. I don't know if for individual adults, what the regulations are around that. I would guess that there shouldn't be an issue if there will be no, like if you're in an apartment and it's only the 4 of you in that apartment. If there's someone else in that apartment, then it becomes an issue. Or if you're going to a hotel and you have 2 rooms booked, it's not that you could go back and forth between those 2 rooms because you can't be leaving your hotel room. I would recommend, if that's something you're considering, to read the Quarantine Act and the rules around it very carefully to know if that's an acceptable practice, or if you're staying in a hotel, to contact the hotel and find out if that's allowed as well.
Great. Yeah, just want to remind you guys that the rules about self-quarantine is proposed by Government of Canada and provincial government. I will definitely check and see if this is if this would be the option for students, but we just try to give you the best answer we can, and some of the rules, being brought to us by government. So hope you find this useful. And there is a question for Kathleen in regards to the mandatory work experience that I just mentioned. So if practicum is another part of your part of your study, where can students get the NBC mandatory work experience letter and how it works?
Sure. So that letter would have been included in your letter of acceptance, so you can find it there. It also is on our website, so
I will share my screen to show students where they can find it. Okay, so everything on our website. So if you go under admission and finance, then you click to
visas, permits, and immigration.
Visa, permits, and immigration. Resources, I believe, and
That's
guides. Right. And then you can find the letter over here.
Yeah.
So you just need to click, but yeah, you should receive it with letter acceptance.
Yeah, and actually while you're there, Hani, if you don't mind just leaving your screen, right underneath that, you'll see Fall 2020 NBCC International Student Immigration Scenarios. If you click on that, that's what you would have received by email yesterday about the breakdown of blended formats in the fall or online and what that looks like. Hani, if you don't mind scrolling down to the last question in that document, and that's how to request one more up, just a tiny bit, right there at the bottom of this page. So if you are requesting a letter of support for your travel to Canada, these are the instructions of how to request them. So you'll email that inbox, include the necessary information that we've listed there, and then we'll get back to you. So I know some of you that have tuned in for this webinar have requested that letter. That's great. I'll get back to you this afternoon, either with the letter if your travel is imminent, or letting you know the details of when you will receive it if you're not leaving until the end of next week, just so that that letter has a date that is closer to your actual date of travel.
Okay, great, thank you. I just have a question for Barbara as well. So Barbara, one of the students asking, do you know if someone gets rejected when they enter into Canada? Or like, what stories did you hear? What could happen?
I don't know about being rejected. What I know was a student from Brazil. He was coming in the flight. So we had one Air Canada flight leaving Brazil in July 2nd, coming to Canada. And he was coming like me on his own with just a study permit, and they didn't allow him to come because they said it was too early. So they suggested him to book the flight for August, so to come in August. So he didn't even board the flight. They just, But
Okay.
coming here, I didn't hear anything. I know about some friends didn't get the open work permit coming through Toronto because they also understood that him as a worker is not essential here right now.
Okay.
So yeah, but not being denied.
Yeah. So
In
yep, thank
Canada,
you. Yeah, students just want,
not a
you know,
student, right? I know
yes,
some
yeah.
people who came for reunification and they didn't allow them to enter Canada, so they had to head back, but not a student.
Okay, great. Thank you for the sharing, because a lot of students wondering, they want your perspective on things because you went through this. So another question is about the registration, and yeah, that is very important. Just keep it in mind that registration, the course registration email will be sent to you in August 17, 18, depends on your time zone. So what it does, it's basically you need to register for the course if you're planning to study at NBCC, and it just tells us that you're going to come and study at NBCC. You will receive this letter, as I said, August 17, 18, depends on time zone, and you will have like 3 days to register. And a lot of students asking me like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna get the visa or if my program is online. And so if you planning to study, I would probably recommend you to register. And in case you get your visa refused on the second stage, if you study online, I mean, it's always better to let us know of your intention by registering for the course. And that is my best suggestion for you guys. Okay, I'll just go. So Kathleen, I think we did cover it. It's about the travel, the letter of support for traveling to Canada from NBCC. And as you mentioned during the presentation, student will receive it and they would need to request the letter from you, right?
That's right, yes.
Okay. Because some of the question has been posted before the presentation, I just want to clarify that this webinar will be posted on NBCC YouTube channel, and I also put the link in NBCC Facebook International page, so you can rewatch it if you missed the beginning of the webinar.
And we'll send you the slides from the webinar as well. So all of those links that are in there, you're able to click on those.
Okay, so there is a question about I want to know if I'm in process of visa. I don't have it right now, but I already applied, and I start to study online, and I'm going to have a problems with the work permit. I think if students course online and he or she just started the course and will this
Right.
impact? Yeah.
So if you're referring to the co-op work permit, I'm trying to think of, so if your program has been designated that it will be delivered in blended format, if it's online in the fall semester and you're studying from home and you have a study permit approval, or not, you can start your studies online from outside the country. And these are some of the scenarios that were sent to you yesterday. There are different immigration implications if you do have a study permit or if you do not when you start studying online from outside Canada. So you should read through that document and be clear on those. But if your program was going to be blended at some point, so say it's a 1-year certificate and the winter semester will be blended, and that's when you'll have your practicum as part of your program. When you entered Canada for that blended aspect, that's when you would get your co-op work permit when you cross the border. So anything that has the co-op component, generally that will need to be done in person in Canada, so you could get the co-op work permit when you're entering Canada at that time.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just reading the question.
Sure.
So there's a few questions that not always relate to these topics. I just ask, and they might be a little bit complicated to, because I see the questions are very legit, but they just, you know, too big to answer them during the webinar, and they would disclose some personal information. For this, I just advise you to send the email to international@NBCC, and just keep it in mind, because with volume of emails, we a little bit behind the schedule in answering, but you can send me the question at NBCC Facebook page, so I'll get back to you a little bit faster and just try to advise if I can. If I cannot, I will point you to a right direction. So the question is about recommended date of arrival on August 18th, and so students wondering if they can come later. As per our email on self-isolation plan, we do recommend you to come in the middle of August, but if you will be a little bit later, it's still fine, because those dates are like highly recommended from NBCC, because you need to start your classes taking into account self-quarantine. But if you will be later, that's fine too. Yep, I hope this answered the question. And the same for hotel. We do highly recommend to have the hotel, so you will properly self-quarantine. But if you have another property like Airbnb, the whole apartment, you can do self-quarantine there as well. Okay, just gonna go.
I'll jump in here, Hani. I've got a couple questions that I'd like to touch on here. So this individual asked, if my visa was issued in August, I am not permitted to enter Canada. That's correct. Under the current travel restrictions, any study permit that was approved or visa that was issued after March 18th is not enough to exempt you from the current Canadian travel restrictions. If you've had a study permit approved after March 18th, if your program is a blended format for the fall semester, so if it does require you to be on campus, unfortunately, you do need to consider deferring your admission, because under the current travel restrictions, which are currently in effect until August 31st, but very possibly could be extended past that, you wouldn't be able to enter Canada and meet those program requirements. If your program is being offered in an online format for the fall semester and you do have a study permit that was approved after March 18th, you do have the option to begin your studies online from outside of Canada. And again, I would recommend that you read through those scenarios that we sent out yesterday, because it talks about the immigration implications of that decision and your options in that regard. So definitely read through those so that you can make an educated decision. Another question that I got here, and is a very valid question, which is, so for those of us that got study permits after March 18th, when can we travel to Canada? In November and December? I wish I could tell you. I wish I had a straight answer for you on that. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in Canada and in the world in the next few months. So right now, we really are just working off of these travel restrictions from the Canadian government that were being given a month in advance. So I can tell you that we'll hear at the end of a month when things will open up, but that's all I can tell you right now. We don't know if these will be extended until the end of 2020 or if until the end of September, whatever it may be. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that.
Thank you. I have a question for Barbara. Barbara, students wondering if your course is online or in person. So what's the course delivery method?
Online, 100% for fall.
Yeah. So even with this course being online, Barbara is still able to travel because he got her visa before March 18th. So yeah.
Now that's great, Barbara, that you were able to come to Canada for your online courses.
Was a little luck. my officer didn't ask me any questions about the delivery format of my program. Yeah.
And you remind me the date that you entered Canada, Barbara?
Was June 15th. Yeah.
Okay. So that was 2 months ago, generally, from when these students will be traveling. So there is a chance that I know, actually, I can confirm that the Border Services officers have received more clear direction on how to assess cases with online delivery. And what they're saying right now is that the only thing that they've listed on their website as a compelling reason to have to be in Canada to complete online courses is if you aren't able to complete them from your home country due to internet connectivity, or if it's unreliable, that sort of thing. So it is possible that when Barbara was crossing the border, they didn't have that clear direction to make those decisions.
I have a friend coming for the upcoming day, so I will let Honey know how her process goes. So her program is going to be 100% online. The thing is, she's going to be in Vancouver, so there is a time zone between Vancouver and Brazil, which is 4 hours. So she probably used that, but I know it's not a compelling reason right now. But I will keep Honey and you keeping up to date about this case, and you can update them next week. So what happened with her?
Sure.
She's
yeah, absolutely.
Her husband and kid. So, and her program is going to be 100% online.
Yeah, and that would be absolutely helpful for us to know. Yeah. But again, and as you mentioned, it depends on the Border Services officer as well and what direction they've gotten. So ultimately, if you're planning to travel to Canada right now, each individual is responsible for providing supporting documentation why they're exempt from the travel restrictions. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I just sorry I took more times than we planned. I just want to show students as a reminder where they can find the recording of this webinar and upcoming webinar. Great. And if there is anything that you want to tell students, any thoughts, please do. I just want to show, if you go at nbcc.ca, once again you go to the helpful information, and there is just work slowly. You can find here the webinars, the pre-arrival webinar for 2019 and pre-arrival webinar for 2020. So all the webinars that you watched in the past would be updated under this link. It will bring you to NBCC YouTube list. So if you want to watch the recordings, you can find them here, or you can go and check on Facebook NBC International page for updates. So yep, that's all I got for Mike. I'm just want to apologize that we did not have the chance to address all the questions, and just stay tuned for more webinars. It's under upcoming webinars. You can register for upcoming webinars so we can address and talk about different topics in the future. So is there any last words from you guys? Anything that you want to tell students?
I'll jump in and just say that given the number of questions and really good, well thought out questions that we've been getting from students, and I know that we sent out that information about fall 2020 scenarios yesterday, which is a lot of information and requires potentially some difficult decisions. We will do an extra webinar next week, so you'll have the chance to see our face once more. But to cover those scenarios specifically and to talk about your immigration questions as they relate to the post-graduation work permit and studying online from outside of Canada, because I know that those can be confusing topics. So we'll send out a communication tomorrow with the details of that webinar that will be scheduled next week, so that if you feel like your question wasn't answered today, we should be able to address it in that webinar.
Okay, thank you. Anything from your side, Barbara, if any?
No, I think we have said it all. Good luck, everyone. I hope to see you here for those who come to St. John.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your participation. I apologize that I took 20 minutes over, but yeah, just try to serve students as much as possible. Thank you for watching, and stay safe. Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.